We're talking next about music, and I can't think of another industry that has seen so much disruption and so much change, whether it's from the streaming platforms to the way that music artists are just debuting and going viral on TikTok. And so with that, I really am excited to bring up our next guest. He is someone who has produced Nas, Mary J. Blige, Mariah Carey. He has founded 2 companies that are changing the game in advertising and in music, a company called UnitedMasters, which he calls a record label in your pocket, and someone who stole a very coveted Bud Light account away from Madison Avenue. So this is someone who understands music, understands commerce, understands marketing, and is driving the change in all 3 areas. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Steve Stoute. Hi.
Oh, thank you.
It's so good to see you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Was that okay?
Everybody, yeah, that was good. I thought the intro was pretty good. I give you a 8.
It's so hard to try to be like your hype person given your incredible background. And what did you think of the walk-up music?
I like the walkout music. It was good.
It was all right?
Yeah, I walked out good.
Okay, what would you have preferred us play for you?
I don't know. I don't have a preferred song for that. I don't have theme music.
You don't?
But, no.
Like you know, when you need to get yourself ready for something, you don't put on a tune to get yourself amped up for anything?
Not anything. Beautiful day, U2. That feels good.
It always feels good.
It always feels good.
We had Timbaland on our stage in May, and we asked him the same question, and he approved of the walk-up music, so I always need to get approval from music geniuses about the music. So I'm glad we have your approval.
Thank you for that.
As I mentioned, you touch so many different industries right now, and when we were prepping for your conversation with me today, you asked me? Why Steve today? And it's all the reasons that I just laid out. But before we get started with sort of the pulse check, you've described UnitedMasters as a record label in your pocket. Why is that so important for music artists to have at this exact moment?
Well, there's been many shifts in the music industry over the years. And one of the most meaningful shifts is obviously streaming. And because of streaming, the gatekeepers, typically the record companies, no longer are the only way to get your music distributed. They had a hold on the artists because of physical distribution. You had to, make vinyls or make CDs. They also had control over MTV and radio. Those things don't matter or matter much less today. And the other thing that happened on the other side is the actual the cost of recording had gone down dramatically, just like the cost of video. So it's become more accessible for an artist to be able to record at home. So being able to create software so that somebody can go from their bedroom right to Apple or right to Spotify or 120 other DSPs around the world, UnitedMasters created that application so that distribution could happen seamlessly. The artists can then retain their rights, not go to a record company and get their music distributed in real time.
And you have what, 2 million?
1.9 million artists that go through our platform around the world for distribution.
Your investors include Andreessen Horowitz, Apple. You're valued at almost $600 million at this point.
Yeah.
Where do you see this going and growing?
Well, what's taking place is like artists, the next generation of artists will not need record companies. They don't need the middleman in order to get their music out there. Artists are being discovered on TikTok, as you stated earlier in my introduction. They're being found on social media, and this idea that a record company can lend you or give you, $500,000 when you're 18 years old, and then own your intellectual property in perpetuity was an idea that existed for 60, 70 years. It's now it's no longer needed, necessary, and that business model is being eradicated by ideas like mine.
And how is your company different, UnitedMasters, from, let's say, a TuneCore or a DistroKid?
I think that we all play a very similar role in providing distribution, frictionless distribution globally. The differentiation comes in services. We own an advertising company, as you stated, translation. We represent the NBA, we represent AT&T, we work with the NFL and so on, ESPN, and having an advertising company housed with a music company allows us to be able to create relationships between the artist and brands. And that is something that nobody else can replicate. When I built the company, I wanted to sit at the convergence of culture, technology, and storytelling. And we got traction early, and Andreessen Horowitz came in, and then Apple came in on our B round, and things have been growing and going well. The independent music market, just for all of the guys in finance, just so you know, is the fastest growing segment of the music business. The growth is not coming from major labels and their frontline business. The frontline business growth is coming from independent music. It's independent artists all around the world. A lot of them coming from Africa, South America, America itself, but the growth and the boom is taking place all around the world.
One of the things that you talked to Dan Runcie at Trapital about in a podcast, this was almost 2 years ago, you said artists need e-commerce tools, they need CRM tools. Explain.
Well, it's one of those few industries where there's a transaction that takes place, but you have no idea who your customer is. So if, Beyonce puts out an album in March and it's streamed by 1 billion plus people, and then she wants to put out another project in November, she has no idea who streamed the album in March.
So a CRM for users, so they would actually be able to see who the TikTok users are that are streaming, that are using, is that what you're saying?
They would actually know who to market to. They would know who the customer is of their music, like every other business. That's the power of, digital e-commerce, that, it's a fair price, and the ability to market your product to the person who bought it the first time is easy because you have a record of that person who purchased it. In the music business, it doesn't exist. You don't know who your customer is. And that is a problem. So building CRM tools is critical for the artists. It's basically giving them a corpus of understanding who their fans are, and they have the ability to monetize their fans.
And this is something you've been talking about a lot too, that artists need to be entrepreneurs. They need to be business-minded, and they need to think about how they're going to make money, which is why your platform exists.
Well, that's been the history of artists, whether it be visual artists or musicians have always been taken advantage of because they lacked entrepreneurial skills, and somebody came in and took away most of the trappings of their success.
You were in Qatar recently, right?
Yeah.
You were there because I think Mariah Carey was putting on a performance. I mean, these private concerts are becoming more popular because I think they're able to make a lot more money in some cases with these private concerts. What is the life of a music artist like right now? They've got to manage their business. If they got CRM, they've got to also put music out. They're distributing on all of these platforms. I mean, it must be pretty stressful to be a musician right now, no?
Well, I don't know if it's stressful. I would say that they're making a majority of their money from live performances when historically they made their money from record sales. So, when each of us in this room, or most of us in this room, looking at the age group, paid $16.99 for a CD in which you liked one song, right? We all fell victim to that idea. That was obviously a huge profit margin for the labels, and the artists made a lot of money off of that. That no longer exists. So the artists now are getting paid, points on a penny per stream, and you need many, many streams, billions of streams to make any real money. So they're using the streaming platforms as a way to create fame and more notoriety and get hot, so they can monetize it through higher margin items, like whether it be live concerts or selling t-shirts or hoodies or whatever it may be. So merch and live performances have been moved to the forefront of where the revenue is, and the music has just been ways of advertising who you are in order to capture that revenue.
You talked about how for forever, really, artists have been taken advantage of.
Yeah.
We just saw the writer's strike end after nearly 150 days. Actors are still in the process of negotiating. Is there ever a world where a Nicki Minaj, a Lady Gaga would ever unionize?
They should.
They should.
They should. They should, and it's a much longer conversation than we have right now, but the artists were not involved in negotiating the rates that they get per stream. They had nothing to do with it. The record companies decided those deals. In fact, the record companies, not only did they decide the deals, they took 18% collectively, they all took 18% of Spotify when Spotify was trying to help change the music business by introducing streaming. The gift that Spotify got was the rights to use the music in exchange for 18% equity in the company. The artists didn't negotiate that. It was negotiated, I guess, on their behalf, but not really though, right? So I don't know if it necessarily needs to be a union, but there needs to be some structured discussion that needs to hold place so that the artists can get their seat at the table when these transformative deals are taking place, because the labels are making these deals on their behalf without them having a seat at the table. And, historically, that's the way it's been, right? Look, you want fame, I give you X amount of dollars, and in exchange, I own your name and likeness in perpetuity. That was the deal, historically. And now, with catalog sales, you guys have seen the recent catalog sales, the artists that own their catalog, the Stings, the Bruce Springsteens, these things are selling at, multiples of 22 and higher. And guys are making, $500 million and these $400 or $500 million these transactions go for, because some of those artists actually own their master rights. The next generation of artists will own their master rights from the beginning. They will never sign it away in exchange for the initial upfront money, because the record companies no longer have the moat of distribution and controlling radio and MTV that they had. And this is not like a theory.
Yeah.
This is just the evolution of technology disrupting an industry.
So before we go back to the catalog sales, would you be in support of your nearly 2 million artists unionizing or working together if they didn't like what maybe you were offering, or maybe they would pull all their music at the same time off of TikTok, off of Apple Music, off of all of that?
Whether it's formally called a union or it's called just some committee that comes together that represents their values, of course I would. I think that artists, they have what they put in what they commit to is something that can't be replaced, right? What they do is very special and unique. And that contribution, because of that, needs to be recognized. Whether it's a union or a committee, whatever, that needs to happen.
So you also talked about artists not needing the record labels anymore because they have the audience and then maybe they get signed later. But at one point in history, it was a sign of validation to be signed to an Interscope or Sony. Where does that validation come from now? Especially
from the fans.
But the fans are fleeting, right? I mean, because they are on to the next trending song tomorrow.
Well, the fans are now, they're going song by song, but they're not fleeting. Music is more popular than it's ever been before in the history of music. So, that part's the good news. The idea that you need to be endorsed by a record company because they signed you and you gave your rights away in order to get that stamp of approval has diminished. So a record label would tell you before, some executive would close his eyes and goes, "Oh my God, that's a hit." It doesn't make a difference what you think. The fans choose first. You find out on Instagram, through social media, through TikTok, whatever. If you have a hit, if there's something viral that takes place. The other thing that's taken place is the speed of fame. The speed of fame is very important. So when you think about an artist like Lil Nas X, who goes from you never heard of him to all of a sudden an overnight success, or a girl like Cardi B, overnight success, these things are happening very, very often, much faster than they happened before in the past. And that is because of the viral nature of TikTok that creates this contagion very quickly. Record companies can't do that. And I'm not doing this or talking about this to come down on the record companies. It may sound that way. I'm really just talking about the transition that's taking place in society and the shifts in the music business that are no different than when it went from 8 tracks to vinyl, or vinyl to 8 tracks, and 8 tracks to cassettes, and cassettes to CDs, and then to streaming. This is now just a transformative moment, and there's a lot of money going into the space because of the catalog sales, because of this disruption. There's opportunity, and we built technology that's on the forefront of that opportunity.
So let's talk about the catalog sales really quickly because we don't have much time left. So some of these bigger deals that I'm sure many of you have heard of, $300 million potentially for Bob Dylan and his publishing rights. You've got David Bowie selling. I mean, is this the end of these huge catalog sales, especially if more independent artists are using services like UnitedMasters, because there will be no bulk catalogs to be for sale?
The catalogs will be for sale, and more artists will control their catalog. I don't think this is the end of it. I think it's actually, we're in the early phases of it, because that's where record companies are going to find margin. If you have outside financiers coming in, and you also have record companies buying it themselves. I guess the most famous version of it that everybody's seen is the Taylor Swift debacle, where she owned it, somebody bought it, then it was sold back. This is the beginning of, music catalogs being looked at as an asset class that can be financed because of streaming, you can see the long-term value of it. You can actually measure how much it's going to stream over a period of time, and there's some level of understanding on, like any other thing that's algorithmic, you can see how much return you'll get over your investment over time. Before we end, I wanted to talk about one of the things that you may ask this question that concerns me, and like I'm sure you guys spoke about it today, which is artificial intelligence and the relationship that AI, what it has and what it's going to do to entertainment overall, whether it be film or music. There's always obviously the panic side of it. Like there's an AI version of a Drake and The Weeknd song that became a temporary hit. So if you can do that, what does it mean for the artists themselves? Or what does it mean if you can start using AI to replicate voices in films and that nature? I always look at some of that disruption no different than what Hollywood thought about the VHS and the disruptive nature of that. Or even in the beginning of the music business, the phonograph was disruptive. What you find is as you lean into it, that because there's so much music out there and there's so much content out there, that AI could actually help separate the clutter, that actually separate what's good from what's bad, or you find something more interesting by using AI to power that level of understanding. But right now, the industry looks at it as a threat. But I do believe if they lean into it, you'll actually find it to be something that can add value to your business versus looking at it as something that will hurt and take away from your business.
I want to end with culture because this is something that you're also very passionate about. I'm wondering what culture signs in culture that you're watching and music that you're listening to. What do they tell you about what might happen next year in the election?
I always believe, that's a great question. You could look at people's playlists and say, and it tells a lot about who you are. Your playlist, the songs you listen to, can tell you a lot about, whether you're Democrat or Republican or other signs about things that describe who you are. I think much more clearer than any Census Bureau form can tell you. What I see happen, I stay very close to culture. I think culture and artists help dictate culture. And the fact of the matter is that I listen to lyrics because the songwriters will actually tell you what's going to happen next. They are very, very important in helping predict and seeing around corners because their job is to stay lockstep with culture. So I'm always constantly listening to songwriters and determining from the best songwriters what the youth is feeling. And the young generation, I'm not one of these older people that feel like it's my way and this is not the way music was and it's new. Like that whole stoic version of my parents, I'm not that. I think it's very important that we are all fluid. All of you guys are in transactions. You need to understand where the youth culture is going. And to understand it, you got to be open-minded. And being open-minded allows you to listen to these lyrics, look at these videos, and understand where culture is going. Because the one thing that we know is not going to change is that young people are going to actually affect and change the future.
So what are you seeing, really quickly? What are you seeing in lyrics and culture?
I'm not predicting what's going to happen in culture. I'm telling you the tea leaves are listening to songwriters and these music videos that you're seeing from the youth because they will actually tell you where culture is going.
well, we're gonna have to look at your playlist next time, Steve. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. All right.
Thanks, Steve Stoute. Great to meet with you.